Tips from Trestle is brought to you by eMenu Choice Point of Sale, Wiseox AI, and Benny Keith Foods. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, my guest is Brenda Davis. Brenda is a registered dietitian and a renowned plant-based nutrition expert and international speaker. She has presented at conferences in 28 countries and authored or co-authored 13 books with over 1 million copies in print. Brenda is currently working on her 14th book, Plant-Powered Seniors, focusing on plant-based diets for older adults, and has published numerous additional articles. A past chair of the Vegetarian Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group, she was lead dietitian for a diabetes trial in the Marshall Islands and received the Plantrition Project's Luminary Award in 2022. Brenda currently lives in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Brenda, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
When we first connected, I was not aware that you were writing Plant-Powered Seniors, this book based on plant-based nutrition for older adults. So let's start with the book. What inspired you to write the book and really focus on that plant-based nutrition for older adults?
Well, Aaron, I'm a senior, so I'm 66 years old. My writing partner that I've written many books with is 83. And the third partner in this book is in her mid-70s. So we were all seniors and recognizing that people who were either plant-based or plant-curious who were seniors, I had a lot of questions and had some challenges around plant-based nutrition. And then the second thing that really inspired us was simply the lack of resources available to support these individuals. So, on the one hand, we've known for years that older adults carry the biggest burden of chronic disease like heart disease and type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, but they also have a lot to gain from changing how they eat. So, we just really wanted to start doing what we could do to support individuals who were wanting to make this kind of transition or to improve the diet that they currently consume. So really, we just wanted to fill sort of a gap that we noticed in the literature.
You went through the list and the ages there. You've probably been writing books your entire career for the broad audience. And now you're like, I'm going to write a book about what I know and an expert in for my peers.
Exactly.
And such a cool thing.
It's interesting because as we've gone through the life cycle ourselves, I've done the book for children and families, and we've done more general books. And when my dad was affected by type 2 diabetes, I did a book on type 2 diabetes. So often we're inspired by what we go through ourselves, for sure.
Yeah, that life experience and expertise always seems to come back hand in hand. And so as we go through, I want to kind of think about your expertise and your knowledge around plant-based nutrition. And I want to think about and talk about how senior living operators can really kind of learn from this, can really embrace this. And so when you think about operators who are providing meals for older adults and seniors, what are some of those key benefits that they can provide by adopting a little bit more of a plant-forward menu for the residents they're serving?
Yeah, and I can tell you that the benefits are really compelling because plant-based or even plant-forward menus tend to lower saturated and total fat. They tend to increase fiber and protective phytochemicals and antioxidants. And this can all make a pretty phenomenal difference for those with chronic conditions. So when you're looking at cardiovascular disease risk, this will lower LDL and it will lower blood pressure. When you're looking at improving glycemic control, you get really wonderful results with these high fiber diets. They also enhance gut microflora, so they improve gut health, which is something that's often overlooked in older adults, but it plays a really critical role in immune function and in inflammation. The other things that I think are super pertinent are that we see people eating more plant-based diets like a Mind diet or a Mediterranean diet. It tends to delay or slow cognitive decline. There's a lot of evidence that diets rich in certain plant foods like leafy greens and berries and legumes and whole grains tend to really support cognitive function. And of course, again, they're lower in saturated fat. And then I think the other thing is that a lot of people might not think of is that this kind of way of eating actually helps support healthy aging generally, but also helps with prevention of sarcopenia and frailty. People might say, what? A plant-based diet helping with sarcopenia? If it contains sufficient protein and other nutrients, because there have been a number of studies that have reported that people eating plant-based diets actually do better in terms of sarcopenia and frailty when the diet is nutritionally adequate because of the reduction in inflammation, because of the reduction in oxidative stress. It's a higher quality diet. There are more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, more legumes, nuts and seeds, and so forth that we know are very protective to human health. So I think from both a clinical and a kind of a quality of life standpoint, it's a win-win. And from a systems perspective, this approach can lower food service costs and align with a lot of communities have sustainability goals. So that is another consideration for facility operations as well.
I love giving the data points, right? And being able to explain the value of that. But I think what really grabbed me, especially as we were initially chatting and planning the podcast, was you told me a story about the impact on someone's health that transitioning from your more traditional diet to a more plant forward or plant-based diet. And I'd love for you to share that with the listeners, because for me, it had such a huge impact through really being able to see and hear and understand why this can be such an important thing for our residents, not just because you gave us all the information, which is true, but the impact for the person itself.
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
Yeah, the individual that I told you about was living independently with his wife, so he was able to go 100% in. And that may not be quite the case for people in care homes because the diet can't be tailored sometimes to that extent. However, the changes that occur, and I have seen this over and over again. I was part of the team doing a randomized controlled trial in the Marshall Islands. And the changes we saw within a week or two of transitioning from a conventional to a more plant-rich diet were mind-blowing. Honestly, I didn't think it could happen that quickly myself. So we saw within 2 weeks' time, blood glucose dropping on average about 75 milligrams per deciliter. We saw, A1Cs in a matter of 3 months drop by 2 percentage points, which, going from an A1C of 8 to 6 or 7 to 5, it was really astonishing. The person that I was telling you about was really quite an amazing story. And this is the story about a man named Carlos. He was in his early 70s when his story unfolded. He had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes when he was 50 years old. And for the next 20 years, he took about 35 to 40 units of insulin a day. And at 70-ish, he was on 17 pills a day. He had fairly severe coronary artery disease. He'd already had a major heart attack, and that was about a year before I started working with him. He had high blood pressure. He had early signs of renal failure. He had peripheral artery disease and chronic gout probably 6 or 7 times a year. And his doctor told him that his diabetes and all of these other diseases were chronic and irreversible. So he never imagined that anything he did diet or exercise-wise would make much of a difference for him. But his oldest son ended up being diagnosed with cancer and was really scared. And he approached me and said, "Can you help me design a diet that'll give me the best chance of survival?" So I did. And of course, he went on this whole food plant-based diet. To support him, Carlos and his wife changed their diets as well. They said, "Whatever you eat, we're eating so we can eat together as a family." After about a year on a whole food plant-based diet, Carlos was taking 0 insulin and 0 pills. His fasting glucose dropped to about 80 to 87 milligrams per deciliter. His A1C was 5.1. His blood pressure dropped to 115/70. And those are numbers he couldn't even come close to achieving with all of the medications he was on. His arteries opened up. They did a PET scan, and even the scar tissue had shrunk, indicating tissue regeneration. His kidney function returned to normal. He even reversed his peripheral artery disease. He didn't have one further recurrence of gout. And in short, he essentially reversed all of the conditions that he was told were progressive and irreversible. When he went to his doctor and said, "Why didn't you tell me this was possible, that I could reverse all of these diseases?" The doctor told him that he didn't tell him it was possible because he didn't know it was possible. He said, "I have believed it if I didn't see it with my own eyes." And so when you commit fully and really make dramatic changes, you get dramatic results. People make little tiny shifts, get smaller results. But nonetheless, the results are always moving in the right direction. So for me, that's really exciting. And to be able to support someone in making that kind of change and see their lives literally transformed before your eyes, it makes everything you do worthwhile. And I think as care facilities, to be able to make that kind of a difference, or even a little bit lesser of a difference, very positive difference in people's lives. When we did the Marshall Islands trial, 63% of our participants were either able to discontinue or dramatically reduce their medications. For seniors who are on multiple medications, that can make such a difference in their quality of life. So there's just a lot of potential for positive change.
Yeah, I was working with a client this week and we were talking about, well, what are you doing? What can we help you set up operationally to help avoid that readmittance to the hospital or the rehab? Or how can you improve their longevity, right? Because it's a great benefit that we want our residents to have. But on the flip side, there's a financial benefit to our residents living with us longer too, right? So how do we help them? When you've talked to operators that have tried this or want to do this, they hear these stories and they think, this is something our residents need. What do you typically find are some of the best practices that they've used to introduce these plant-based menu options, especially when you think about some of the older residents who maybe are not familiar or skeptical about the idea of more vegetables or more plant-based in their diet?
Well, to me, the success usually hinges on familiarity, flavor, and flexibility for individuals. And so I think the most effective strategies include number one, sort of having crossover dishes or offering a plant-based option along with the traditional options. We think of recognizable comfort foods, like if you're doing a chili, do it plant-based. You could offer regular and a plant-based option. You're doing a shepherd's pie, you could offer the regular and the plant-based. But to me, the trick is for those that are choosing the regular, to provide them with a little sample of the plant-based so they can taste it and experience it. And in some cases, that can make all the difference for them. I think doing taste tests, food demonstrations, and resident panels where they have a say, they get more acceptance that way when they taste the food and give feedback. When they're brought into the process, you let them vote on their favorites. They get a sense of ownership over the shifts that are made in the menus. It becomes more of a fun experience rather than a change that's being imposed upon them. And then the
Yeah.
other things I think are just to do it gradually. You could start with one plant-based meal a week, and you could make it Meatless Monday or whatever. One of the things that I think people can do is make it like an ethnic experience. It's a Mexican night, or it's an Asian or Japanese or South American or Mediterranean, where you're borrowing from cultures that are really good at doing plant-based food. So the stuff is delicious and somewhat familiar. The other thing I think would be in storytelling and education. When you talk about the benefits, the way you frame the discourse really matters. You might want to talk about how this way of eating might improve your energy or help with your digestion or constipation, or it may support your memory or your mobility, or increase independence or reduce dependence on medications, as opposed to just saying, well, this is a healthier way to eat.
Yeah.
To me, success improves when staff and leadership are visibly supportive and engaged, and that means some education there as well.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the staff education piece, because I do think, those of us in food service, while we understand it and, we know how to saute vegetables or steam them and provide, those dishes, but we're not typically in the frame of mind of the plant is the focal point of the meal. When you think about trying to work with a team of culinarians and service staff that aren't used to that, right? Not used to having the plant as the primary focus of the meal. What are some things that you would recommend around training to help them be better about it when they create these meals so that they're appealing, they're nutritionally adequate, and that way they're really truly embracing and executing the plant-based or the plant-forward menu idea?
For over a century, Benny Keith has been a trusted leader in the food service industry. As a broadline distributor, we offer an extensive selection of products, delivering to 21 states through 10 distribution centers. We can help you create a thriving culinary culture by pairing quality products with customized solutions that elevate your residents' dining experience. Our team of registered dietitians provide unmatched customer service by modifying menus, selecting recipes, ensuring regulatory compliance, and more. Quality, value, and service are at the heart of everything we do. Benny Keith Foods puts the care back in healthcare.
Yeah, I just think it's critical that they have the tools they need and the confidence to cook and serve these meals, and that they taste great, they meet nutritional needs. That means providing culinary training on how to work with foods like legumes and tofu and whole grains, and how to build flavor and balance textures, and use spices and herbs. So that usually means bringing in a culinary expert with, that sort of plant-based training, so that they can help people do that. And then that's from a culinary perspective, but you also want to train the other staff as well, not just the kitchen staff, but the caregiving staff to help them understand what makes the meal well balanced, where the protein will be coming from, how to include calcium-rich foods, how to get enough iron and zinc and B12 and all of these things. And then I think it can make a big difference to have sort of an ongoing mentorship by a dietitian with plant-based expertise so that she or he can help them to troubleshoot challenges, ensure menu adequacy so that they feel confident about the food that they're providing. And it's really, I think, powerful when staff has a chance to taste the food, to ask questions and all of those things. Cross-department collaboration to me is really important. You have the culinary staff, the wellness staff, the activities team, the caregiving staff, and they need to be aligned to support the integrated lifestyle changes. Some of them will be in the realm of fitness, some of them will be in the realm of food and other things too, like sleep and so forth. So I think that's really important that we're looking at the whole person and making changes that will be implemented across the board. And I think staff needs to be trained to recognize misconceptions like, eating plant-based means eating a lettuce salad with tomatoes and cucumbers on it, which nothing could be further from the truth. And so we need to teach people about those things and also to feel confident in some potential shortfalls of plant-based diets so that they can make sure that the diet really is adequate.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I know that people are always thinking, well, if you're not eating the meat, you're not getting all of the nutrients you need. And people worry about getting all of that. But at the end of the day, it's really just about understanding how to blend the right mix of vegetables or other plant-based products to create the balance of the meal. As we come to a close here, I did want you to put on your futurist hat, especially because you've got all of this experience with plant-based nutrition. What do you think the future holds for plant-based nutrition when it comes to senior living? We know it's something that this newer generation is going to be looking for and asking about. So how can they get themselves ready to embrace plant-forward nutrition for the future?
Well, I definitely think this is the future. Smart communities need to start opening the door to this concept of more plant-based offerings. What we see is wellness-focused boomers coming into the senior living. The broader move towards sustainability and chronic disease prevention and plant-based nutrition is just going to become more and more central to senior care. And there may be some older residents that just want their meat and potatoes. But there will also be a lot of younger residents that are choosing a facility based on more modern values. Facilities can prepare by just gradually shifting their menus, investing in culinary training, bringing in dietitians with expertise in plant-based nutrition. And I think most importantly, being respectful to and listening to the residents within their facilities. And it's not about taking anything away. It's about expanding options. It's about celebrating food. It's about helping people feel vibrant and supportive as they age. And I think this is no longer a niche. I think it really is the next evolution in evidence-based aging. And so we just need to grow into that realm and being a little more open to some of these concepts.
Yeah. Embrace it. Don't fear it. Is kind of always my thing with change. So, well, Brenda, this has been an amazing conversation. I remember many years ago, I was very hesitant around the plant-based. I had a person on the executive team where I worked one time, and they were like, well, we're going to bring in this healthy menu, and that means we're going to do smoothies all the time. And I was like, what in the world are you talking about? And so the idea that it has evolved in this way makes me much more confident that we can execute that. And so if listeners want to learn more about how to get your book when it comes out or connect with you and visit with you about how maybe you could help them in their communities with this transition, I'd love for you to share how they can connect with you and learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. My website is brendadavisrd.com. The book will be called Plant Powered Seniors. And people can email me if they so choose at brendadavis@telus, TELUS.net.
Perfect. Well, Brenda, thanks so much for your time. I think this is an important topic that we need to continue to push forward in our space. And I appreciate you joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Well, it was my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.